Have you ever scrolled through social media and thought, why isn't my life like that? Why don't I have that house? Why don't I have that car? Why don't I get to go on those vacations? Think about this one. When was the last time you looked at your life and you thought, man, I am so blessed and fortunate to have all of the things that I have? G'day, I'm Zach Rule and welcome to Rule of Reason. Today we are going to be talking about gratitude. Now, why did I start with social media? I think for obvious reasons. I think we can all agree that what you see on social media is not real life. And the reason why I think gratitude is so important as a topic for us to talk about today is how can you be expected to compare your everyday life to someone else's highlight reel? Because let's be honest, that's what social media is. The problem with always comparing yourself to what everyone else has instead of being grateful for what you have is comparison is the thief of contentment, of joy, of happiness, whereas gratitude gives you a posture in life, a heart posture of thankfulness, of happiness, of contentment. It's just, you're in the exact same situation, but depending on if you're grateful for what you have or not, dictates just how your life plays out. Now, I've got my phone with me today because I've got a few statistics that I want to be able to share with you all that I'm hopeful may put things into perspective and help you to have a little bit more gratitude for what you do have. Now, if you're like me and you were blessed and fortunate enough to grow up in a wonderful country, you may have heard people say you should be thankful for what you have because just living in this country puts you in the top 1% of all people in the world. And you sort of go, yeah, okay, and you roll your eyes a little bit because it's sort of hard to comprehend. What does that even mean? But it's actually really, really important to stop and think about what that means. Now, I've crunched some numbers, and sure, some of you listening along absolutely are in the top 1%. But the top 1% of the world's population today is about 82 million people. So while that's a lot, there are 8.2 billion people on the planet. But a more accurate figure is if you're on a phone or on a computer and you're watching or listening to this show, there's a really good chance that you're in the top 10% of all people on the planet. Now, this is where the phone comes in. A few stats for you based on the population in the world today. If you live in any of the Nordic countries, that's Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, or Iceland, they make up 27.8 million people. Then there's the Centralised and Western Europe, which is Switzerland, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Germany, and Austria. That's another 121 million people. The Anglosphere, which is United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, there's another 403 million. And then Asia, the wealthy countries there, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, obviously omitting China. That's 181.5 million. And then there's a bunch of small wealthy nations, Monaco, Liechtenstein, Qatar, and the UAE. It's another 13 million. All of those countries together make up 746.7 million people. Or, compared to the world's population, that's 9.3% of the world's population. Now, if you were to exclude the USA from that because of how big it is, that's only 5%. All those other countries only make up 5% of the world's population. Now, why is that important? You could look at it and go, well, 740 million people, that's a lot of people. And you're right, it is a lot of people. You've got to think about who's excluded from that list. The rest of the world's population is 7.3 billion. So at any point in time, there are 7.3 billion people worse off than you. If that doesn't put things into perspective, I mean, 7.3, it's such a huge number, it's hard to comprehend. But if that can't make you take a moment and think, gee, I'm pretty lucky, I'm fortunate to live where I live, to have what I have. I mean, look at me here today. I am in a beautiful city walking through beautiful parklands. We would call them reasonably priced clothes, but I have them. I am healthy. I'm happy. I have a good family. I'm able to eat. I could go on and on and on, but there are so many things to be grateful for. And I want to give you a few comparisons here to give you examples of, first of all, what it was like for people 200 years ago. And then I want to give you some real comparisons of what it's like for people today, right now, who live in the lower tiers of society to you, and what that means. So 200 years ago, just to give you an idea, in a working class family in industrial England, a typical workday was 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week. Work was dangerous, dark, most likely in noisy factories, and there were no safety standards like we have today. Injuries were common, skilled workers earned just enough to feed their families, and unskilled workers take lower paying jobs, barely scraping by. Families lived in cramped buildings, often sharing 1 or 2 rooms with 5 to 10 people. There's no running water. It was shared outhouses amongst people living within a community. Air is polluted with coal smoke, and diseases like tuberculosis spread easily. Drinking water often comes from contaminated sources that led to outbreaks of cholera and dysentery. So already you can see that is so much worse than today. And this is only 200 years ago. I'll keep going though. So food, basic food like bread, potatoes, and gruel, which is thin porridge. Meat is a luxury. Fresh produce is unaffordable. And malnutrition is common, especially amongst children. Most children can't go to school. Kids as young as 6 or 7 have to work in factories, mines, or as chimney sweeps to help the family make ends meet. And work is physically demanding and dangerous. Healthcare basically doesn't exist for the working class. Public hospitals are overcrowded and unsanitary. And diseases like cholera, dysentery, and tuberculosis will kill you if you get them. I could go on and on. There's so many things here that I could go on and on about. Working 6 days a week allows no time for entertainment, especially because back then it was men in the workplace. If you were a male and it was your job to provide for your family, all you did was work. You didn't go to the footy or the cricket or the soccer or whatever sport you like. If you were lucky, you'd go to the pub with your mates on your day off. But usually you'd spend your time off with your family because it's the one day off you get before you're back at work again, working all day. So life 200 years ago was pretty bleak. Now today, because you might go, well, that's 200 years ago and the world has moved forward, and thank goodness. Another thing to be grateful for. Today, if you're in the 70th percentile, and what I mean by the 70th percentile is 30% of the world's population are better than you, but 70% have it worse off. That's talking about someone, say, in sub-Saharan Africa, a farmer. Their income is around $5 to $10 a day. $5 to $10 a day, and they're only 20% below where we are. Can you believe that? I mean, I don't even know how they can make ends meet on that. Their living conditions, they're in a small shared home made of simple materials. There's no clean water or very limited access to clean water. Electricity is probably intermittent at best, but most likely unavailable. Farmers work from when the sun comes up to when the sun goes down. Medical care, again, almost doesn't exist, or if it does, you can't afford it in the countries that they're in. Education, very, very basic, but more often than not, you don't have an education because you're, as a child, required to work on the farm to help the family. And they don't have the freedom or the luxury of picking a career, taking vacations, or pursuing hobbies because their lives are dictated or dedicated on survival. I mean, when did you wake up and think, oh, I have to do everything I can to survive today? Like, that's just not something that we have to think about. But this is something today that these people have to think about. Now, this is the final piece for gratitude as far as today. There are people living like this in the world today. The bottom percentile, absolute poverty in the world today. Imagine a family that lives in somewhere like South Sudan or a remote village in rural Haiti. The figure that's thrown around that's considered, if you're below that, you're in absolute poverty, is $1.90 a day. How does anyone live on $1.90 a day? I don't understand how that could be a metric to say, oh, well, if you're above that, you're not impoverished. Anyway, that's the metric. So someone living in South Sudan or a remote village in Haiti will earn less than $1.90 a day. They live in a makeshift shelter or a mud hut. They have no electricity, no access to clean water. Hunger is a constant reality. They are lucky if they get one meal a day. If they do eat, it's likely to be something like rice or maize. And most people living in this bottom percentile have issues with malnutrition. There's no healthcare, so if you get sick, even from something like diarrhea, you will die. There's no education. Violence, disease, and displacement are common threats, and families are often forced to flee their homes and their communities due to war or just dangerous situations that are likely to kill them. For someone living in this percentile of the world's population, every day is a battle for survival. Every day. And that is happening today. 2025 in the world. That is happening today. If that doesn't help put things into perspective, if that doesn't help you wake up in a comfy bed with a fan or air conditioning, comfortable, safe, walk downstairs, electricity, lights turn on, you open your refrigerator, you get food out, you have a car, you drive to work, you have a good job, people don't attack you. Man, you have so much to be grateful for. I urge you, please look at this and put it into perspective and have some gratitude for just how good your life is. Now, I've got a few more things that I want to point out, but another thing that I also want to address throughout the weeks is that humans have been the same for a long, long time. And whether you're a Christian or not, there is wisdom in the Christian Bible that was true when it was written thousands of years ago, and it's still true today. So to tie that into this, I want to read you a verse from 1 Thessalonians 5:18 that says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." This verse emphasizes the practice of gratitude regardless of your circumstances and promotes a mindset of thankfulness so that it can transform your outlook on your life. Now, you don't have to be a Christian to believe that this is good wisdom and that this is a great value, moral to apply to your life. I want to urge you, because I've done a lot of statistical reading today, so I haven't always been looking at the camera, but I want to urge you to think through what we've talked about today, whether it be historical and what life was like for humans 200 years ago, or how bad things are in the world today for some people. But just know that, circling back to the start, issues like comparison and looking at people that have it better than you and complaining, well, why don't I have that? It goes back as far as biblical times, and I guarantee you before. But the antidote to that is don't look up. Don't look forward at people who you think have got it better than you. But look at your life within, be self-aware and go, man, I am so blessed to have what I have. And if you can just pivot that one little thing and choose gratitude over comparison, I guarantee you every day is going to be so much better. So what I want to do, this is my call to action. As I said, every week, there's going to be something at the end of every episode for you to practically apply to your life. And today's is to practice gratitude. I want every day for the next 5 days, I want you to write down 5 things that you are grateful for. As I said, I'm grateful for a beautiful, sunny summer day. I'm grateful for the peace and quiet, the tranquility walking through these beautiful gardens. I'm thankful for the clothes that I have, the family that I have. Right there, 5 things, 4 things. I can't think of how many I just said, but that I can be so thankful for, and there's so many more. So I urge you, try that one. Gratitude is the key to seeing the beauty in all areas of your life. So I hope that you were able to get something out of that today. If you like what this channel is trying to do and what we're trying to work towards, please consider liking and subscribing, and stick with us, because next week we're going to move on to the next important part of this series, which is perspective. Today we've talked about gratitude. Next week is perspective. And I really hope that you're all getting something out of this. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.